Well, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JJD TV. I'm your host, Josh, and we are back with another episode of our Canadian men's national team abroad series, where each and every week we take a nice little look back on the weekend and see how our Canucks did abroad. And basically this week we're going to have a little more of a condensed version, only focusing on a few different storylines, as well as giving praise to the new CPL champions Pacific. So if you guys are excited for this episode, be sure to drop a like on the episode now, drop a sub as well if you like our content, and let's get into the episode now. Alright guys, to start off the episode like we always do, we are still going to focus on our Big Five for this week, with the first one of the Big Five being Alphonso Davies, who had their Klassiker. It was a match that, if you can't tell by my background, I am a Dortmund fan, so I mean, it's the one time I'm really hoping that Alphonso Davies has an excellent match and then Bayern lose. Didn't quite work out that way though, guys. Alphonso Davies actually did not have, in my opinion, one of his strongest matches. He got undone pretty easily for the first goal that Julian Brandt scored. There was a questionable handball on him as well earlier, but it was luckily waved away. He did what he could. He didn't really have the impression of having that much control over the match, but other than those couple moments, he had a relatively decent match in what was a really entertaining game where Bayern won 3-2. With it now, it just puts them more at the top of the table. They have 34 points right now, with Dortmund now dropping to 30, so they're seeing pretty clear at the top of the table. It's really exciting as a neutral. If you're watching it, for me, a little stressful, didn't like it so much, and obviously being a Dortmund fan didn't quite work out, but yeah, it was one that Davies, was one of those tougher ones, didn't quite go his way, but I mean, he got his 3 points and Bayern move on, sitting top of the table by 4 points. Moving on to the second player in our Big Five is Jonathan David, and Lille finally had a good week. They had played a game midweek against Rennes, who, if you guys know, are flying right now. They're doing very, very well in the season. But Lille actually away from home with a surprise 2-1 victory to finally break that streak of not winning a match in the league. Jonathan David had a bit of a quiet one in that match, though. He ended up subbing off in the 71st minute. Not too much to tell, wasn't overly involved. It's just one of those matches for them, but they got the points. That was super important, carrying on to the weekend where they won once again 2-1 against Troyes, and Jonathan David was directly involved in both goals, scoring the first one, which is credited to him, and a lot of people thought he technically scored the second one, but it was actually given down as an own goal. He came on the pitch at halftime, and it was much needed, as Lille started up a little bit differently in a 4-2-3-1 setup, but to see Jonathan David, obviously, with it not working that well coming on at halftime, definitely was the spirit that they needed, getting another goal to go even more clear at top of the table with the amount of goals in League One, which is super impressive for him. Jonathan David, it's just good to see, because Lille, I always have question marks about them this season. They seem very inconsistent, but 2 wins in the bounce is fantastic, and David obviously getting involved is even better. I wish that own goal counted as another goal for him, but it is what it is, and another successful week for Jonathan David. Heading on now to the third person of our Big Five is Kyle Larin, whose side Besiktas drew at the weekend, which is, again, unfortunate. Besiktas just cannot find a way to get back to the form that saw them be so successful last year. They're 6-3-6 in the league right now. They're not sitting very pretty. They have no real form going into their final Champions League matchup against Borussia Dortmund. And Kyle Larin started in a 4-3-3 and played out on that left wing position. It just did not have much of impact on the match, and unfortunately for him was subbed off in the 67th minute. Bit of a frustration there. I'm not sure exactly what's going to go on with Besiktas, because I definitely need to turn this season around. We're going to have to wait and see what's going to happen, but Kyle Larin is definitely missing a little bit of that form, and I'm not sure if they're going to have to switch something up, maybe try 4-4-2, play him up top with Batshuayi, because we need to get him firing, because he was such a pivotal player for last season, which had Besiktas being so successful. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but a bit of a frustrating week once again for Kyle Larin. Moving on to number 4 in our list, but sticking with the same side, Besiktas, is Atiba Hutchinson, who had the same result with the draw at the weekend, but fortunately for him, he had a much better game, in my opinion, than Kyle Larin did. Still playing in that 4-3-3 system, as we touched on. But Atiba Hutchinson played 88 minutes and just played a very, very appropriate defensive midfielder position. And you saw that with his statistics and his movement on and off the ball. And having a 98% pass completion is a ridiculous stat. He's very good, as we know, with the ball at his feet, creating opportunities for himself. And that's exactly what he did. He just was relaxed on the ball, very good with his passing, and was a bit of a distribution. But seeing him go 88 minutes is good, given his legs had a little bit of rest there, and see him fight back to still be a leader in his Besiktas side. Because again, Kyle Larin, we want to see his performance increase for Besiktas, but Atiba Hutchinson still needs to bring that leadership to the pitch, because they are really struggling. This was a side that did not go through these controversies last year. They were just so consistent and so successful. So Atiba Hutchinson being a leadership in that locker room needs to find a way to get the guys vibing together again, because I don't want to see this being a frustrating season for both of them, because they both need to keep that form, which will then allow them to perform the way that we want them to for the national team. Moving on now to our last player of the Big Five, it's Stefan Eustáquio, who, side Pacos de Ferreira, once again had a bit of a frustrating weekend. At the weekend, they lost at home to Vitória de Guimarães 2-1, which is a bit of a frustrating one there. Eustáquio, fortunately though, did play all 90 minutes, starting as the CDM in a 4-3-3 system. He had a relatively good match, as again, he always does. Eustáquio always seems to have some type of input on the match, but unfortunately for them, slipping in that 2-1 loss puts a little bit of frustration over the match, which keeps Pacos de Ferreira 13th in the table with a 2-5-6 record. They're only 1 point off its 16th place in the relegation zone, and honestly, only 3 points out of last place. So something has to happen there. Eustáquio is too good of a player to be hopefully dealing with this kind of stuff. I really want to see him get a move potentially in January. We're going to have to wait and see. But again, Larin, Hutch, and now Eustáquio, 3 consistent players that are consistently this season compared to last season are getting some frustrating results. Moving on to England now, and Theo Corbiano, he had a cup match midweek. Frustrating one at that, as Theo Corbiano is finally finding a little bit of form, which is fantastic to see, fantastic to watch with Sheffield Wednesday, but unlike the Besiktas boys, it's one to forget. In the midweek matchup against Hartlepool United, they had a frustrating home loss, 3-0. They ended up 3 substitutions at halftime. They tried to find something that worked, but they were just not able to do it, and they unfortunately got knocked out. It was frustrating because Corbiano was able to start. It was a good little matchup in the EFL trophy, which we assume that Sheffield Wednesday could have went on a deep run and had some success for silverware this year. And to lose the way that they did at home, 3-0, is super frustrating. Corbiano did not have a good night. No one really, for that Sheffield side, had a good night. And it's just another one to forget as they hopefully bounce back and try to pick up 3 points in the league to continue to push for promotion. Staying in League One, taking a look at Burton Alban and our boy Daniel Jepson, he found similar fate, but in a different cup competition that Theo Corbiano did, as Burton Alban took on in the FA Cup Port Vale, where they lost 2-1 at home. Unfortunate for them, they lined up in the 3-4-3 with Jepson starting as well in that center forward position, the lone number 9. He lasted and played 86 minutes in the match, did not have any goal contributions or anything like that, which is a little unfortunate as they took the early lead and then 2 late goals ended up eliminating them in the FA Cup. It had been a storied run kind of moment for them in the FA Cup, being a 3rd division side, but you still would like to see them. This is a winnable game for them, and unfortunately for Jepson, once again, we're going to have to battle back and try those 3 points similar to Wednesday to see if they can compete for promotion in League One. Heading on over to Belgium now, we're going to take a look at EK Ugbo and his side Genk, who's got some interesting news that we'll touch on towards the end of this one. But there's 2 matches we want to look at for EK Ugbo. The first one being a cup match taking on Club Brugge. As we've known, Genk has struggled throughout a lot of this season. In this matchup, Genk lined up in the 4-2-3-1, where Ugbo did not start. He was subbed on in the 77th minute. He missed a big chance in extra time, and then Genk fell 5-3 in the shootout to be eliminated against Club Brugge. Frustrating stuff for Genk as well there. And then they had another one at the weekend where they ended up drawing 1-1 away from home. They lined up once again in that 4-2-3-1 where Ugbo did not feature at all. And with that, John van den Broek was sacked. He was sacked yesterday, and it's very interesting because EK Ugbo, in my opinion, was a great pickup. He's scoring 16 goals last season, being very, very successful in this league, knowing this league. And the goal scoring with the injuries that Genk has just not been there, and EK should have an opportunity to start thriving. Maybe a new set of manager coming in obviously makes things very different for a lot of players, but in my opinion, the sack probably needed to happen. Genk is too good to be sitting 8th in the table, which they are right now with a very good squad. So hopefully EK Ugbo will have a new manager that comes in that gives him a shot, recognizes what he did last season, and give him another go. So it's a shame that it didn't work out with the manager on this particular side this year, but hopefully with someone coming in, we'll see Ugbo getting back to his good form, and the results will start turning around. Moving on over to Chile now with Hachipato and Juan Cordova, who got relegated over the weekend. It's a huge shame because the amazing recovery of points that they had was quite incredible. They won 4 of their last 5 matches, picking up points left, right, and center, drawing a few before that. They ended up getting to 16th place in the table, which was relegation, with 37 points. 15th place had 37, while 14th and 13th had 38. So it was very, very close in the final match where they won 3-1. They lined up in the 4-3-3 with Cordova getting subbed on in the 60th minute. A relatively good game all around, and thought that it potentially was enough, but with the teams around them picking up points, Hachipato unfortunately was relegated. It is what it is. And we'll have to see potentially any transfers that might happen, and if where Cordova could potentially go. He's certainly good enough to play in the top flight in Chile. Maybe we'll find a team where he can get a little bit more game time because it's kind of fluctuated throughout this season. It's a shame for Hachipato, and we'll have to see what happens with the future of Juan Cordova. Moving along at Scotland, we're going to take a look at Scott Arfield, a player who we just don't know where his international future lies, but we do know that he's getting a lot of love from his new manager, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, who's putting a lot of faith in him. Midweek, they had a game against Hibs where they won 1-0 away from home, an impressive one. Arfield did not start that match. He got subbed on in the 66th minute, but it was an important win to keep the pace at top of the table for the Rangers. And at the weekend, Arfield did start and played all 90 minutes in a 4-3-3 setup as Rangers beat Dundee FC 3-0. And Arfield had a pretty good game in that match as well, which now puts Rangers still top of the table with 16 games played, 12 wins, 3 draws, and 1 loss. We don't know what's going to happen with Scott Arfield, but the nice thing to know is that with the new manager coming in, he's getting the faith and he's getting a lot of minutes, which could potentially come useful should he play for Canada once again. Moving along to Harry Patton and his side, Ross County, who midweek were not able to pick up a win, but they were able to pick up a draw as they drew 0-0 against St. Mirren, which was a relatively boring affair, but Harry Patton had a pretty solid performance as well, still playing in that 4-2-3-1 setup as one of the CDMs. Harry Patton has really impressed me this season, playing for a very below average Ross County side, so in my opinion, if he does end up getting relegated, he will certainly get picked up by some team as the performances have been very convincing and he's doing very well from that deep playmaking role. But unfortunately, still for Ross County, they're buried in the bottom of the table in 12th place with 2 wins, 5 draws, and 8 losses. I like Harry Patton. I like the way that he's playing, and I still think that he's going to definitely get a call up for the window coming next year in 2022 for Canada, especially if these performances keep coming, even though the results aren't quite there. Heading on over to Switzerland now, taking a look at Liam Miller, whose side Basel is slipping up a little bit in form, which is not good to see. They drew at home once again. They ended up scavenging a point as they had a penalty conceded with the 90 minutes plus 2, and then Kasami actually scored in the 90th minute plus 5 to get the draw at home. They are slipping a little bit behind Zurich now at top of the table. They are sitting in second place with 8 wins, 6 draws, and 1 loss, 30 points. A game in hand on Zurich, but still 4 points behind, so they can close the gap with the win. Arthur also had a missed penalty in that match as well, which happened in the 55th minute, so that could potentially change the outcome of the match. Miller started as in the 4-2-3-1 at the left attacking mid, starting and playing 63 minutes. Not his best overall performance, dangerous from time to time, but it just was one of those frustrating matches where once again Basel is dropping points. They've been drawing a lot, which is a little bit cause for concern in the league, but I still think they have a good shot at potentially going from silverware, and I'm excited to still see, despite the performance that Liam Miller is starting, and I hope to see him starting once again come next weekend. Moving along to Serbia now, we're going to take a look at Milan Borjan and his side Red Star as they continue to pick up clean sheets and continue to pick up points. As midweek, they picked up a 1-0 win, and at the weekend, they won 2-0. Every single time I've pretty much talked about Milan Borjan, we just simply talk about the amount of clean sheets he picked up, and this weekend's no different. But top of the table, the first and second place teams have 50 and 53 points, with the third place going down to 34. So it's really a 2-horse race in this league right now, with Milan Borjan continually impressing, continually picking up clean sheets, and considering he's our starting keeper is exactly what you want to see, and he'll be ready for the next international window. Heading on over to Turkey now, we're going to take a look at Samuel Adekubi with 2 matches to talk about. The first being a cup match midweek where Hatayspor won as they ended up drawing 1-1, going to penalties and winning 5-4. Samuel Adekubi was given some much needed rest as he was subbed on in the 50th minute, lasting the rest of the game and stepping up and scoring a penalty in the shootout and winning it obviously 5-4, which is impressive to see Adekubi step up and convert the penalty to move on to the next round. The weekend match wasn't so nice as Hatayspor was at home against Istanbul Besiktas, who's really turned around their form. They ended up losing 3-0 at home, which is quite unfortunate there. Adekubi did start and played all 90 minutes, having a decent match, but they just weren't up for it as Istanbul Besiktas really are closing the gap and are now only 1 point behind Hatayspor, who sit 4th in the table with 15 games played, 8 wins, 2 draws, and 5 losses. Heading on over to the United States, we're going to take a look at Tajon Buchanan and the New England Revolution, who Buchanan's move to Europe came. It looked like it potentially could be a dream finale, but that was not the case, unfortunately, as Tajon and his side were knocked out of the playoffs. They were, after a record-breaking season, were one and done as they took on New York FC. And it was a really good back-and-forth game, but you could tell with the big break that New England had that they just really weren't up for it. It ended up going to 2-2, going to extra time, then going to a shootout, which New York won 5-3. Tajon started and played all 120 minutes, and he's ended up scoring the tying goal in extra time, which was obviously pretty nice to see, going out with a goal, scoring it on the 118th minute. But for Buchanan, he actually had a really frustrating match. He just didn't seem like he was up for it right now. No one on that New England side did. They got better as the game went on, but it was kind of that running start that they just didn't have, where New York picked up that momentum and kept it going and kind of took it to New England for the first little bit, and it's frustrating, but it's nice to see Buchanan go out with at least a goal. Not the best performance, and obviously with a loss, but we're sure to see him over in Belgium for some definitely updates going on there. Staying in the United States, moving on to Ashton Morgan, his side RSL, who made it one step further than Tajon Buchanan, as Real Salt Lake took on Portland in the Western Final. Unfortunately for RSL, their storybook little playoff run came to an end as Portland had a comfortable 2-0 win over RSL. Ashton Morgan did not start or play in it, but I just want to give him a shout out because he was the Canadian who technically went the farthest in the playoffs, as now the final setup for Portland versus New York City in the MLS Cup. We're heading home now and stopping in Canada to take a look at the CPL final between Forge FC and Pacific FC. Pacific FC really impressed me all season long. They were very consistent, playing great football. They were just, all in all, the total package, even getting that cheeky little win over the Whitecaps, and arguably could have even gone deeper in that competition. They slipped up with a little bit of injuries, a little bit of issues obviously having there, which is not having a very full and strength team with Marco Bustos and going out, which is not easy considering he was on an MVP form. But they battled through the adversity, finished third in the standings, went away in the semifinals to Calgary to win, which is not easy to do, then to head to Hamilton and win as well. Is an incredible story for Pacific. They get a spot now in the CONCACAF League with Forge going to the CONCACAF Champions League. It's fantastic for the CPL all around. I know our BC supporters are going to absolutely love it. And now there's a new winner of the North Star Shield, which is fantastic. So a big shout out to Pacific FC with a really incredible season. And to round up the episode, guys, we got some housekeeping notes to go on with Marcelo Flores, obviously a very sought after and hyped youngster who's been called up for the Mexican national team for a friendly against Chile, which is very concerning to me. I mean, I always personally thought he was going to choose Mexico. It made a lot more sense at the time considering his family connections and where he represented at youth level. It's not fully decided yet, but going to the nationals team and getting his first start before actually playing at a non-youth level is super impressive for Marcelo Flores. We'll have to wait and see how this goes down, but unfortunately for us Canadians, it's not a good look. He obviously didn't recognize, the big win over Mexico, but it's fine. We'll have to see how that story progresses, but it's not looking good as Marcelo Flores is going to represent Mexico against Chile in a friendly. And finally, on this episode, we're going to touch on Ferdy Cagliago, who's might be my last time talking about him, as it's rumored he's going to sign a new 5-year deal with Fenerbahce, and he's close to selecting his national team, which looks to be Turkey, obviously able to represent Canada, which he's not really spoken out too much that he had any interest in doing. The Netherlands and Turkey, and it's starting to look, since he's getting this new deal, going to sign for Fenerbahce long term, he's going to be potentially accepting a call up to Turkey. So we're going to have to wait and see also how that one goes, but it looks like a couple important dual nationals that we might lose out. So it's not a really great week finding that stuff out for us Canadian men's national team fans, but we're going to keep you guys updated with those stories as they progress. So guys, thank you so much for joining this episode of our Canadian men's national team abroad series. We always enjoy doing this. Let us know what your thoughts are over the weekend, how our Canucks did, anyone that impressed you, as well as these dual national stories. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know in the comments. And one last time, be sure to drop a like on the episode. It's always appreciated. Drop a sub as well. Help us get closer to 7,000 subscribers, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, friends.